what exactly is life enhancing? What does this phrase mean? And do we now need to reframe the discussion about sustainability with this new, I say new concept, or a slightly different emphasis, which is regeneration? Because Fritjof, for many years, you've been talking about the need to switch our concept of growth. It's not that we shouldn't grow. It's the fact that we need to change our concept or thinking away from quantitative growth to qualitative growth. So Daniel, it's fantastic to have you on this call, you know, as an author who has very much written extensively about regeneration. Recently, there was an article in The Guardian talking about the need to switch from sustainability to the concept of regeneration. So given the fact that, you know, for many years, you know, Fritjof's systems view of life has very much been inspiring people, why do you feel now that a lot of people who have already been working in the area of sustainability are now kind of focusing on the concept of regeneration? What is regeneration for you?
When I, in 2006, was working on, or between 2003 and 2006, was working on my PhD, which I thought was going to be in design for sustainability. About a year and a half into the PhD, I realized that there's somehow, and I know that there's a lot of people who work in sustainability who have a fully regenerative understanding of sustainability. So this is not a replacement of one term with another. It's just the strength that what came out for me while I was doing my PhD research is that sustainability as a word doesn't actually tell us what we're trying to sustain. It could be applied to all sorts of things. And so in the end, I changed the title of my PhD to Design for Human and Planetary Health. From a systems view of life, that's the pattern of health, the pattern that connects, that brings health and well-being to the entire hierarchy of life, from cells to organisms to communities to the whole biosphere. That's what we're trying to sustain. The word regenerative more clearly speaks to this need for regenerating the patterns of life, because basically what has happened over the last 150 or 250 years since the Industrial Revolution is that we have caused so much damage to the system, deforested, emitted so much carbon, that we need to do a lot more than simply not adding any more damage, which is one interpretation of sustainability. As Bill McDonough used to say, sustainability is 100% less bad. It's the neutral point. But you can move beyond that. And Bill Reed has created a wonderful, and then the people at Regenerative Group have developed a wonderful spectrum where you go beyond sustainability into restorative, but restorative can still be done in the mindset of humanity over nature, rather than humanity as participant in nature as nature. And when it's done like that, we get these projects where people plant eucalyptus trees in dry areas and celebrate that they've planted 100,000 or a million trees, and then they die a year later. So that's the kind of engineering mindset of restorative. And then there's this step of reconciliatory, where we put humanity back in nature. We understand that we are participants deeply dependent on the planetary life support system. And only when we intend to design as nature, not just learning from nature, but own our own agency as living beings in this process, can we start to work regenerative. And the point being that you could even go back all the way to beginnings of agriculture 5,000 years ago. We have a long history of destroying, having a destructive impact on the planet. And we have the potential as human beings to be keystone species and actually positively influence, bring back forests where there are deserts now. The work that John Liu is doing, that he reported on the China Loess Plateau, is a great example. And now Common Land Foundation is doing work in Australia, in South Africa, and now in Spain, trying to give big examples of how whole regions that are arid and desertified can, through wise human intervention, become more abundant, more bioproductive, not just for human needs, but for the wider community of life, as the Earth Charter says. So yeah, regeneration is about that.
It seems to me that these terms, generative and regenerative, are really sort of terms that have come up in recent years and are being used more and more. I remember, for example, the book by Marjorie Kelly, which is called Owning Our Future. And she argues that at the very heart of corporate structures is a certain concept of ownership. And she distinguishes between extractive ownership and generative ownership. And so she wants to redesign ownership, and doesn't want to redesign, but she gives dozens of examples of companies, of organizations who have redesigned ownership toward a generative ownership. And she talks about a generative economy. As Daniel just said, there are many people who talk about regenerative agriculture. But I want to say a few more words about sustainability, because I will continue to use this term, and I want to explain why and how. Also, maybe to show that there's some diversity among us. We agree on the basics, but we have different approaches that are mutually compatible. So sustainability, the problem I see with sustainability is not in the term sustainable, but it lies in the fact that from the very beginning, it has been combined with the term development. And so most people actually don't talk about sustainability, but about sustainable development. And this is very problematic. It's problematic because the term development has two very different meanings in biology and in economics. For biologists, development is a very basic property of all life. All living organisms develop. And it implies a kind of multifaceted unfolding of organisms or ecosystems or societies moving toward fulfilling their potential in a very broad, multifaceted way. Now, economists have narrowed this down to a single linear economic dimension, measured usually in per capita GDP. And so they have compressed the richness of human existence into this one linear quantitative parameter. And so if development is used in that economic sense, and especially if it is associated with unlimited economic growth, which is manifestly unsustainable on a finite planet, then sustainable development is an oxymoron, and development of that kind will never be sustainable. And if we combine development with regenerative, we will have exactly the same problem. As long as we use development in this narrow economic sense, it's hopeless. It will not be sustainable, nor will it be regenerative. And in fact, this is what we observe today, that the economic environment today is not life-enhancing in the beautiful way that we heard in the preamble of the Earth Charter, but is increasingly life-destroying. Today, as everybody knows, we have turbulent markets, we have corporate mergers with rapid structural changes, we have increasing workloads, we have demands for round-the-clock availability. And so all this combines to create an economic environment that is profoundly unhealthy, stressful and unhealthy. And so the task is to create a new kind of economic environment that is life-enhancing, that is carbon neutral, free of toxic food, supportive of communities, with living wages, humane working conditions, and so on. So that is the task.